Lights, camera, action.
And the winner is...
Welcome back to the Current Buzz, part of the Oscar Reel Movie channel. Back with Haley and Matt Schmidt. Today we've got a Netflix movie, came out March 6th, starring Mark Wahlberg, Winston Duke, Alan Arkin, directed by Peter Berg, Spenser Confidential. So this is loosely based on a book series with the same...
I didn't know that.
With the same name.
Okay.
It is initially written by Robert Parker, later by Ace Atkins. Starring Mark Wahlberg, him and Peter Berg teaming up for like the 5th or 6th time after Patriots Day, Deepwater Horizon, Lone Survivor, Mile 22. You know, they've been doing a bunch of stuff together. So Mark Wahlberg in the lead role, Winston Duke playing the sidekick Hawk, and Alan Arkin is like the father figure type person, I guess. This is kind of like a mystery, like a thriller. You know, it's supposed to be. It's kind of a cop drama.
Like a crime, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a crime drama. You know, it's a cop drama, another cop movie that takes place in Boston. There's a little bit of mystery to it. So yeah, like I said, it was a Netflix original. It was released straight on there, so it was easy to watch, easy to get to for people. For me, this is going to be a tough one to talk about and review because this movie was very much kind of the definition of like being in the middle of a movie for me. Like, it isn't good or great, but it isn't bad either.
Right.
Those are the ones that I think are the hardest to talk about.
Yeah.
But we're going to try to do it anyways.
And part of me feels like, and I've seen a number of people saying this, specifically with like Tiger King and stuff, but it's like, is the stuff that I'm watching actually good, or is it just because we're in quarantine life and anything is like good enough? If I were to sit down and watch this on like any other normal day of the year, like in any other year, would I have enjoyed this the way that I did? Maybe not.
Yeah, because this came out right before the quarantine time, but we didn't watch it until recently.
Right.
Which I would have said at the time like this was maybe an okay movie, but then Extraction came out recently, and then we reviewed that one, and people can go back and listen to it. And I loved Extraction, and that makes this look worse.
Not as good. Yeah, exactly.
I thought Extraction was great. Because I was kind of thinking the same thing you were, like, oh, as long as it's new, maybe it's like it's good no matter what. But then, when they actually put out good material like Extraction, makes me look back at this and think, oh, maybe this was a little more meh. But not bad, but just not great. So what do we want to start at the top? What did you want to talk about first with Spenser Confidential?
One thing, it's weird because it's like, it's a thing that I liked about the movie, but also something that probably lowered my score, is that, I think the kind of crime drama aspect of it, because it's, so Spenser, he was a cop, went to prison for a few years because he ended up beating up, was it his, the
captain.
chief, his captain. Ended up beating him up, and so, he went to prison for a few years. He comes out, and some of the guys from his squad, had been murdered, and so I think the story there was actually pretty fascinating. It was interesting to try to figure out, okay, what guys are behind this, because nothing felt right. That the guy, this one cop had supposedly taken his life. It's it just didn't fit his character, and so I really liked that kind of investigation aspect of it, and the fact that Mark Wahlberg's character Spenser, he wasn't on the police force obviously at this time, but he's still using his skills and stuff, so that was really entertaining. But also it had really funny moments too, and so it was kind of cool seeing two sides of it, but also I think it could have been a stronger movie if they had just focused on one aspect. What do you think?
Yeah, my first thought with this movie is, I'm done with Boston movies. Like,
Okay.
too many movies just take place in Boston. Like, some of my favorite movies do, like The Departed and Good Will Hunting, but at this point it's like just oversaturated. I feel like almost every other movie, cop drama or whatever, takes place in Boston. So like, can we please just get out of Boston? In the book, it is in Boston for the most part, so I guess like you can't deter too much from the book, but he's from Wyoming, like the character originally, so
Okay.
It's like maybe they could have focused on that a little bit. But yeah, the beginning is it sets it up in a fairly above average interesting way where Spencer's in jail because he beats up his captain because his captain is a wife beater, and Spencer is like very much against that and any violence against kids, the innocent, stuff like that. But then it kind of turns into a bigger picture thing, which I love. I love when, like LA Confidentials or other film noir movies like Chinatown, like a little investigation turns into a bigger plot. Like I love stuff like that, which this I think tried to do, but it just didn't do it that well in my opinion.
Yeah.
So it just starts out with like, he's in jail because he beat up his captain, and then when he gets out of jail, he's kind of living his life normally, and things start taking a twist because the captain he beat up ends up being murdered, and so people start asking him questions because they're like, "Hey, listen, like the day after you get out of jail, the guy you beat up is dead. We gotta ask you questions." Mm-hmm. And his former partner is in it, kind of. He seems to be helping him out a lot. Like, he's like giving Spencer the benefit of the doubt, just saying like, "Hey, give him the alibi. See, he has an alibi. He's fine. Let's get out of here." But like all the other cops in the force pretty much hate Spencer because they liked the captain, and Spencer beat the shit out of him, so they don't like him anymore. But because the captain dies, it opens up this like huge plot of like, why did he die? What's the bigger thing that's going on in the background? So that's where it was interesting, but then it kind of loses itself a little bit there, I think. We get introduced to Hawk, who is living in Spencer's like old room because he doesn't have, I guess, parents. He isn't living with his parents anymore. He's living with his old boxing coach, who's Alan Arkin. And Alan Arkin is training Hawk, who's Winston Duke's character, so they're like living together now. Which is slightly different than the book. Like, they were both former boxers, but they're both like... But Hawk is like a hitman. He's like a mercenary.
Okay.
So that, in the book aspect, that makes it more believable for him to be involved in all this.
Yes.
Because watching this movie...
Yes.
And while I love Winston Duke, and I think he should do more stuff, because obviously great in Black Panther and Us, like in this, he's just like an MMA fighter who is now taking along...
Zero backstory.
Yeah, so it's, that wasn't fleshed out the greatest, and it wasn't too believable just having him tagging along.
Yeah, other than the fact
like,
that,
crime stuff.
you live together and you've known each other for 5 minutes. Yeah, okay, I guess work together and figure this out. Like, no, that didn't make any sense to me. So hearing what the original story was like, okay, maybe that makes a little more sense then.
Yeah, so I think this movie, like, took some shortcuts in certain points of the plot that maybe didn't help it out a whole lot.
Sure.
But yeah, so they started investigating like why the captain got killed, and it turns out, like, I guess spoiler alert from now on, because if you do want to see this movie, you don't want to hear any twists that happen in the movie. You can go watch it on Netflix and then come back and listen to this. But spoiler alert, moving forward, it's a dirty cop ring is kind of what's going on, which is pretty evident early on. I would say is similar to another movie that we reviewed recently in 21 Bridges, where it's a dirty cop crime drama that's going on. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that his former partner, who's been nice to him this whole time, is actually like the head honcho main villain behind everything. And it's weird because like it doesn't really stick the landing in the sense of they wanted something to do with Wonderland, which is like this dog park, which is going to get turned into a casino and resort. So the cops were doing all this dirty action and stuff, or dirty things behind the scene, dealing drugs and taking money, all this stuff. They were doing all that to like have a cut of Wonderland, which just maybe it makes more sense in the book, which I haven't read, but it just didn't make a lot of sense to me, like why these cops are doing all this, and like the end game just didn't seem worth it to me.
Right.
Like they're trying to get in on this. I get casinos make a lot of money, but it just I didn't quite get it. I didn't get the motivation behind all these cops and what they were doing. And everything. I don't know. Did you have a better understanding?
No, honestly, I didn't, and yeah, I feel like I kind of lost track of how Wonderland fit in, and then as they're having, kind of like big showdown at the end, I'm like, wait, why are they at this place again? Like it didn't make a big enough impact for me to be like, why does this actually make sense they're here right now? Like, I mean, like the scene and like the action and stuff was good, but it's like, why are we here besides, this is just another place to go? Like,
that's the good way to put it, because I felt like this movie was full of like a lot of this thing is happening just to move the plot along. Like at one point, so they find out that his former partner Driscoll is the head honcho behind everything, and Henry, who's Alan Arkin's character, they bring him and everyone to Spenser's like girlfriend's house because they're like, okay, well they're gonna look for you at your place, so you gotta stay here and we'll be safe. And then Spenser comes back a little bit later and Henry isn't there, and his girlfriend's just like, I don't know, he just left. He said he just wanted to go home. He wanted to be at his house. And then Henry gets kidnapped by Driscoll. And I'm like, why did Henry go to his house? Like, that people are out there trying to kill you. Yeah. What reason? Like, are they really saying, like, I think at the beginning of the movie, he's like, oh, I love this house. I'm never going to leave. People have tried buying me out of it, but I'm not. But, like, that's kind of a lame excuse to have this guy, like, your life is threatened and you just decide to go to the place that they're going to find you and kidnap you. Like, that's a thing where I'm like, okay, they just did that to, like, move the plot, I guess, and for not a great reason. Yeah, no, that's a good point. And you get, like, Driscoll. Driscoll is, like, the big bad guy behind this. He's, like, in charge of everything, but I didn't quite get that either. Like, so him and Spenser were former partners, so, like, Driscoll's boss was the captain that got killed, or that he killed. But, like, how does that hierarchy work? How does, like, a low-level, like, cop like Driscoll become the head honcho of like this crime ring? Like, I didn't get that. I didn't get like how he became in charge of everything. Yeah, there wasn't much, right? Like, well, not low level. He's a detective by the time like Spenser gets out of jail, but
it's not like he's the captain or anything.
No, exactly. Like, why are all these guys afraid of him, and why are all these guys following his lead? Because I really don't understand why. It just felt like, oh, here's a twist. And actually, I thought of that early on. They said, I can't remember what the line was, but like less than 20 minutes into the movie, I'm like, well, Driscoll's the bad guy because he's being too nice to Mark Wahlberg right now. You did say that. But like, maybe this movie is using that as a fake out. Usually the first, it's like Scooby-Doo, right? Like, the first person you think is going to be the villain is never actually who it is. So I was thinking that this movie was doing that, so I'm like, oh, Driscoll probably isn't the bad guy. But apparently I was giving this movie too much credit, because that isn't what happened. Like, that is who the bad guy was. Yeah. So yeah, that was kind of confusing to me. And also, so the bad guys in this, like the street level bad guys in this, have a bunch of machetes that, like, whenever they corner Mark Wahlberg's character, they like fight him and they have a bunch of machetes. What the fuck is up with the machetes? Why do they have machetes? I think there's like one line of dialogue where like, oh yeah, this certain gang really likes using machetes. But that is such a terrible, impractical, like, weapon to use this day and age. It's short, close quarters combat. If someone has a gun, they're just gonna shoot you. It's like the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like, the big guy with the sword, he's swinging it around, and Indy just pulls the gun out and shoots him. Like, what? Why do you have... And also, I like how they attack him when he's, like, in a taco restaurant or whatever. Yeah. And they're all just sitting around. And literally, like, there's guys, like, pulling the machetes, like, out of their jean leg. Like, how are you hiding that? Right. How are you able to, like, sit down and bend your legs with a machete? Like,
in your pants.
Down the line of your pants.
Yeah.
It made zero sense to me.
You know, and you're saying, like, oh, it's such an easy weapon to, like, overtake. So, yeah, Spenser's in the restaurant ordering food. Hawk is staying out in their car in the parking lot, and he realizes, oh, shit's going down, so he just slams the car into reverse, drives into the restaurant, and he's just like, hey, Spenser, get in. Like, let's get out of here. And it's just like, oh, okay, I guess that's how that ended.
Yeah, so, like, I mean, there are some, you know, you're right.
Did the gang ever come back into it?
I think that's just... They were. It's his thing. Like, it isn't 100% clear. At least
I didn't take very good notes on this, so I'm trying to remember what happens as we like, talk about
this
it.
This movie didn't hold my attention like long enough, or like maybe it was explained, but I was dozing off during it because it just didn't hold my attention. But I feel like that gang was involved with Driscoll, not like people he was in charge of, but maybe who he was trading with, or like they were somehow involved in Wonderland as well. So I'm not 100% sure about that.
Yeah.
But I think that's what that aspect of it was. But yeah, I mean, like you said earlier, like, I mean, I don't mean to be just shitting on this movie the entire time, even though it isn't great, but it isn't terrible either.
No, it's not.
The action is good when it's going on, like the fight sequences. And you said it like earlier, like it's funny. Mark Wahlberg's a funny guy. Like,
yeah.
I can't remember. I feel like The Other Guys or something was his first like comedy, and since then people were like, he's just a funny guy. And Winston Duke is great. So like their chemistry is pretty good.
Yeah, they do have good chemistry. One thing that's kind of funny is you know, Spenser gets out of jail, and is it Henry? Is that right? Comes and picks him up
Arkin,
and. You know, brings him back to the house, and he's like, oh, yeah, I can't wait to see my girl, can't wait to see Pearl, and you're kind of like, oh my god, who is this chick? And it's his dog. It's like the super old dog. The name is Pearl, and he's like, oh, yeah, my little pearly baby, he's so excited to see her, and he goes into his room and finds out that he has to share the room with Hawk.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, Pearl's out in the hallway, like, the next day. He's like, oh, yeah, he's all excited for, like, Pearl to come in and snuggle with him. And she comes in the room and just, like, walks right up into Hawk's bed and, like, cuddles up with him and stuff. And just, like, their reaction, he's just like, oh, my God, this place sucks. And, like, Hawk always has, like, almond milk in the fridge and just shit like that they kind of, like, argue over. And it's, like, some of those moments were actually pretty funny.
Yeah, like, Mark Wahlberg is hilarious throughout this. Like whenever he's cracking a joke or being sarcastic or whatever, like, he's good.
He's got good delivery.
It's just the character and the story itself is kind of meh to me. And it has some cliches or like, tropes that I think happen a lot these days. I feel like since Fallout, Mission Impossible Fallout, action movies just have to have a fight scene in the bathroom now.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
There's a giant bathroom fight scene, which just felt so Boston because they're playing like Sweet Caroline in the background and everything. Just in case you forgot, this movie took place in Boston. They wanted to remind you.
Yeah.
Of course, Henry can't figure out how to use a camera. It's like, I felt like that happened at one point in the movie. And just some of these characters just felt like caricatures, you know, like stereotypical-ish characters. Like, his girlfriend is kind of funny, but she's kind of that stereotypical, like, annoying Boston. I'm sorry to any Boston fans out there, but, like, you know, like, that stereotypical idea of, like, a Boston girl. So, like, I don't know. It was decent, but just kind of the plot wasn't exactly there for me.
I mean, I would say, you know, like, it's worth watching. It's probably not going to be my number one choice, but if someone said, hey, is it worth it to, like, watch this movie? I would say yes. It was entertaining enough.
Yeah. I think most, like I said, the action scenes were good, and Mark Wahlberg is funny, so if that's something that, you know, it's something you don't need to think too hard when you're watching, because, like I said, like, the plot just isn't quite there. But yeah, I mean, it's funny, and the action scenes are pretty decent, so... it's under 2 hours long, so yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely something if you're sitting at home, you know, in this quarantine time with not a lot going on, and
give it a try.
You, like everyone else in the world, has Netflix right now, and you haven't seen it, then yeah, I'd pop it in and yeah.
Pop it in, like it's the VCR or something.
Yeah, I'm old. Oh man, yeah, pop it in like a VCR. You need to get that tracking button up and down, you know, make sure you don't have the
Be kind, rewind.
Salt and pepper on there. The last note I had on here too and I actually forgot about this, so thank God I'm old now. I need to take notes.
Yeah.
So there are a couple FBI agents in this movie. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't, which is sad. Maybe it'll refresh my memory.
One of them, like, that's not a real person. He was one of those caricature type people I'm talking about, where he just was so over the top in how he talked and the things he said that I just remember watching this going, like, no FBI agent would talk like that.
Right.
No one would do or talk like that person at all, ever. So that took it away from me a little bit, but yeah, that's the last thing I had written down here. So,
all right.
I guess after all that, what score would you give?
I was gonna turn that over to you first. What's your score?
This is like the perfect, like, fine movie, like, not good, not great. So I'm giving it a 5.5.
Oh, a 5.5.
Yeah.
See, it's funny.
I could maybe bump it up to a 6, but like my initial thought is like this is like kind of right in that middle.
See, we know that it's really hard for me to give, like, high scores on movies, but it's also really hard for me to give low scores on movies.
You're just trying to make everyone happy. You're a people pleaser.
I mean, that's probably true to an extent, but at the same time, it's like, I was entertained by this. Like, I'm not, like, it would be, and I made it through the whole thing.
No, yeah.
So it's like...
That is worth something. And
yeah.
You're right, like, the action scenes were good, but, like, whenever there wasn't an action scene going on, like, I was bored watching this.
So, I give this one a 7.2.
Oh, you are generous. All right. That's fair. No, I mean, movies are arts. They're subjective to everyone.
I don't think I've given out many scores in the 6s. I haven't given out a ton in the 9s. I'm a pretty strict, like, 7 through 8.
Those are the only scores you give, the 7 through 8.
Yeah. It would be really hard for me to give something, like, less than a 6.
No, all right.
So, with that, I give this one a 7, too.
Okay, all right. So 5.5 for me. Like I said, anywhere between a 5.5 and a 6 is kind of like that. This movie is just fine range, so I guess it could fall anywhere in that, but I'm just saying a 5.5. On IMDb, it's a 6.2. On Rotten Tomatoes, its critics score 38% and audience score 55%. So,
okay.
Last thing to note here, actually, I didn't realize it till I was looking stuff up just now, but one of the writers on this is Brian Helgeland. He's actually an Oscar winner. He wrote a movie I actually referenced earlier in this review, which is one of my favorite noir films, which is the movie he won the Oscar for. It is L.A. Confidential.
L.A. Confidential?
I love that movie. This movie, Spenser Confidential, is not L.A. Confidential, but now I just realized they both have confidential in it.
Just realized that?
Well, I just processed that in my head, saying them back to back like that. Mm-hmm. This is no L.A. Confidential. Spenser Bordeneshel. Bordeneshel. That's what this movie should be called.
What are you trying to say right now? Are you trying to put bored and confidential into one word?
It didn't go that seamless for me, but yes, that was what I was trying to do.
I'll give that a 5.5.
Well, you do it. What you do it, Spenser? What word? How would you combine bored and confidential together?
I mean, I don't know. I wasn't really bored by this movie, so I'll just skip that activity.
Okay, fine. Alrighty then. So yeah, that's Spenser Confidential, streaming on Netflix. Check it out if you got some free time. It is under 2 hours, and the action sequences are pretty good. So. Check it out. Let us know what you thought of it. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram. We're at OscarReelPod on both. So yeah, from Matt and Haley, this has been Current Buzz.